Hi, I'm Ross Mayfield, investment strategy analyst here at Baird, and we are back for another weekly video with our friends at Strategas. This week, we're thrilled to be joined by Washington research analyst and fellow Kentucky Wildcat, Courtney Rosenberger. Courtney, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well, it's a great time to have you all on, and this week in particular, there is a lot happening in Washington, and so we're really thrilled to have your all's expertise. Let's start with the biggest picture possible. So there is a $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill that has been proposed. There is a lot of division, it seems, within the Democratic Party between moderates and the progressives. If this bill gets chopped down, where do you ultimately see it landing? And what are some of the first and biggest things on the chopping block to make that happen?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways that they can kind of bridge the divide between the progressives and the moderates here. So leadership in the Democratic Party has been really trying to get the Democrats to move away from talking about this as a $3.5 trillion bill, because it's $3.5 trillion over how many years, because that's really how much money per year is really what's important here. So there's a few ways where moderates and progressives can win. They can talk about the gross number. If you're a progressive, you can talk about just the gross amount of spending, $3.5 trillion. If you're a moderate Democrat, you can talk about the net amount of spending and say, oh, you cut it down from $3.5 trillion and maybe you did $1.75 trillion because you're netting out the tax implications. They can also change the amount of years. So instead of doing a 10-year bill, they can move it down to a 5-year bill. That obviously brings down the price tag, but it doesn't necessarily change the amount per year, which is really when we're thinking about this, what's important. We do see the bill, going down in size on a per year basis as we go through this process, as moderates kind of draw their red lines and what they're willing to do on the tax side of this and the spending side of this. Our base case is we're going to have $250 billion per year in spending. So that'd be a $2.5 trillion spending bill over 10 years, and then $125 billion in taxes. So $1.5 trillion over 10 years on kind of the offsets and the tax increase side of things. There's a lot of areas that can be ripe for cutting down. They might only do a couple of years of, say, a tax credit versus 10 years of a tax credit. They might, kind of moderate down some of the social spending issues in terms of affordable housing or elder care. There's really everything's on the chopping block at this point because they're still writing the legislation. And there are a lot of things that they're trying to include in this bill.
Yeah, well, a couple $1 trillion that'll end up happening, I guess. Well, let's talk about taxes. It's always one of the kind of headline items with something like this. And there are a couple big tax implications, both for corporations and on the personal side. Let's just get your all's updated view on where some of the key tax items land, be that corporate, dividends and capital gains, estate tax changes. Has anything changed meaningfully in the past couple of months for you all?
So some of the items have changed meaningfully, some have stayed the same. So corporate tax rate, 25%. We've been of that view basically since President Biden was elected and the inauguration. So that hasn't moved. That's where moderate Democrats are. The GILTI tax rate, so the tax rate on US multinationals for their foreign source income, we've been at 18% for a while. President Biden's proposal is to bring that up to 21%. We've been at 18%. On the individual side, we have seen some changes. So 39.6% for the top marginal rate. We've been of that view. Capital gains, though, in the last couple of days really has had some changes where it seems like there's a coalescing around the 28% rate versus parity with the ordinary income tax rate. 28% is where we've been. But instead of doing that for individuals earning over 1 million, it seems like they're bringing that down to just the top tax rate overall. So potentially individuals earning over 400,000. That's a pretty big change. But that's essentially kind of that moderate versus progressive negotiation of progressives saying, okay, if we're not getting parity with the ordinary income tax rate, then we want to have the rate in effect, for a lower threshold. So that's something that's changed. The estate tax, we haven't really changed our view on that, but it seems to be some movement going on within the Democratic Party of more of a coalescing around, instead of an unrealized gains tax upon inheritance, more of a move towards, raising the rate, lowering the exemption level. We are hearing about some new taxes, a pay gap tax for CEOs versus workers, treatment of buybacks as kind of capital gains and dividend taxes. So there are some new taxes that are being introduced. Those are very complicated. Of this is very short, so we're not anticipating those to actually be able to be implemented, but there's going to be a lot of tax headwinds over the next 2 weeks because they need to find ways to pay for this legislation. So really anything is being thrown at the dartboard and they're seeing what sticks.
Yeah, I mean, again, a couple $1 trillion, got to pay for it somehow. So I can see how that strategy might pay off. Last question, quick hitter, the debt ceiling. Janet Yellen wrote a note to congressional leaders recently saying October was actually the kind of the timeline to watch. Do you anticipate that this gets resolved, or is it just another headwind to keep an eye on?
Yeah, October without a set date in October. So a difficult time to pinpoint, beginning versus end. We're leaning more towards the end is when the actual X date would be. There's a few ways that they can figure out a way to deal with the debt ceiling. None of them are great. So the first is that bipartisan infrastructure bill. So the $550 billion of new spending that had the Republican support, that's up for a vote by September 27th, according to Speaker Pelosi. They could try to couple the debt ceiling with the continuing resolution to fund the government. Keep in mind, we still have to fund the government. That expires at the end of September, or else we go into government shutdown. So they can try to couple those three things together. Say Republicans voted for the bipartisan bill in the past, maybe they'll vote for this whole package holistically together, even though they've said they won't vote for the debt ceiling. If that doesn't work, then we could go into a government shutdown with the debt ceiling kind of hanging out there. Repeat of 2013 and the pressure of the government shutdown plus the debt ceiling pressure, the threats of credit downgrades forces policymakers to act. And then I would say kind of the last resort is Democrats could either reopen the current reconciliation instruction or wait until the current reconciliation bill passes and open a new reconciliation instruction and pass a debt ceiling with 51 votes just on Democratic lines. That's not what Speaker Pelosi wants to do because she wants Republicans to vote for this as well and give her moderate Democrats some cover. But Democrats can do this through reconciliation with just 51 votes. Just instead of suspending the debt ceiling until a certain date, they have to actually put a dollar amount on the debt ceiling.
Gotcha. Well, a lot of moving parts, and it's really these times where we feel lucky to have the Strategas Washington team on our side. So thanks so much for the time, and I'm sure we'll be chatting again soon because, like I said, there's a lot going on.
Certainly there is. Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks.